Hi, so I wanted to share with you a story since we're talking about dogs that are service dogs. Usually, I bring one of my dogs to school during this week when we're talking about service dogs. But I'm going to be sharing this story with you. Normally, we read it at centers. It's a really easy story. It's not a fourth grade story, it's a little bit easier. It's like a third grade story. And it's about how a dog becomes a visiting dog. So there are lots of different kinds of service animals, and a service dog is a dog that actually is goes lives with a person and helps that person to navigate in the world. So for example, if somebody is visually impaired, a service dog would probably could help that person to navigate and to get around. A service dog is a dog that goes and visits people. So a service dog might go to a hospital or to a retirement home or to an airport. I've seen service dogs at airports before because sometimes people get really stressed out at airports. Or sometimes they might just be at a hospital and they could help people that are in the emergency room or people that are actually in a hospital room. So, this is a story about a dog named Rosie, and it kind of explains all the steps, all the things that Rosie has to do to become a visiting dog, not a service dog. We're going to read about Ira, and Ira in our story that we read for class is a service dog. And so we're just going to read about Rosie, and we're going to see the steps that Rosie has to take to become a service animal. So I'm going to switch my camera so that you guys can see my book. And if it's a little glary, I will kind of hold it up so that you can still see it. So this is what Rosie looks like. She's pretty cute. And like I said, normally you would be reading this in centers all by yourself. But because we're quarantined, I'm going to read it to you. All right. And I only have like 5 copies of it. So this is called Rosie, a Visiting Dog Story. And it's dedicated to Rosie. This is Rosie, my dog. She loves to play fetch. She will roll over to have her belly rubbed, and she will lick you on the nose if you are her friend. Rosie is like many other dogs, maybe even like your dog, but in one way, Rosie is special. Rosie's got a lot of fur, huh? A lot of hair. Rosie is a working dog. Here she is in her uniform. Her red harness and special badges say to everyone, I am a visiting dog. A visiting dog's job is to cheer up people who are sad or sick or lonely. Rosie was not always a visiting dog. She had to be trained for her work. This is how Rosie looked when she was a puppy. Oh, she's super cute with all that hair trimmed out of her little eyes, huh? You could see her eyes. Rosie the puppy would not have been a good visiting dog. She was too wild and silly. And that's true of most puppies. They would not allow a puppy to be a visiting dog. Puppies have too much energy. Rosie liked to snoop. Rosie left puddles in all the wrong places. Rosie chewed everything in sight. But even as a puppy, Rosie was gentle and friendly, and she was a good listener. I knew that Rosie would make a good visiting dog someday. We started Rosie's training at puppy kindergarten. Robin Covery was our teacher. She taught me how to teach Rosie. Robin was firm but always gentle. That was important because Rosie had to trust people. She had to be confident that no one would harm her. Rosie also needed to keep her independent spirit. She might have to make a decision on her own while working one day. Rosie liked school. She learned her lessons fast. So here Rosie's learning how to sit. Rosie sit, good dog. Rosie down, good dog. Rosie stay, good dog. Rosie come, good dog. And you can see that the trainer's using body language, right? Her hand is down. And then here she's saying sit, right? And then here she's saying stay, and her hand is out like that. And then here she's saying come. She has her arms wide open, right? So the dog is reading her body language. At home, I tried to prepare Rosie for her work. First, it was important for Rosie to be a happy dog. After all, a sad dog could not cheer anyone up. So we played a lot of games. Her favorites were fetch and catch me if you can. Rosie would also have to get along with other dogs in case she had to work alongside them. So she got plenty of time to play with her friends. This is awesome. They're sharing a stick. I have a friend that has this big, huge dog. It's a giant dog, and it's a rescue dog. She got it at the pound, and it's probably twice as big as these guys. It's a huge dog, but it loves to fetch. But the sticks it fetches look like trees. Like it will drag a big, huge stick. And it always makes me laugh. It drags these big, huge sticks that are like 3 times as big as this stick. It looks almost like a tree. You say go fetch, and it goes and drags a tree. So this page just has a picture of an elderly gentleman. A good visiting dog has to be comfortable with all kinds of people. I introduced Rosie to as many different people as I could. On one street, Rosie would sit quietly with an elderly person. On the next street, she would run and play with a child. Rosie always had good sense. If a person wanted to play, Rosie played. If a person seemed shy, Rosie would lie down and wait for the person to come to her. Rosie was ready to join the visiting dog program at the ASPCA when she was 2 years old. Her real training was about to begin. So just like with service dogs, if we're comparing Ira in our article and Rosie, service dogs and visiting dogs start out by kind of being fostered by people, right? They learn how to act, and then they get sent to very specialized training. So Rosie's about to be sent to, here's Rosie, right? A lot older and wiser, and is being sent to special training. Our teacher was Mickey Niego. In the class, there were big dogs and small dogs, short-haired and long-haired dogs, pedigrees and mixed breeds. All the dogs had 2 things in common. They were friendly and they were happy to work. So it doesn't matter. If a visiting dog doesn't have to be a certain size. If you're a working dog and you're helping somebody that's visually impaired, you have to be a little bit bigger and taller, because a blind person can't hang on to you if you're down low to the ground, right? So most of the dogs that are that help people are a little bit bigger. But if you're just visiting and cheering people up, you can be any size. You can be a little yapper. You can be a big, huge dog. This looks like a big, almost part St. Bernard, right? Kind of a big dog. Mickey began the class by having the dogs practice their basic obedience skills. Sit, down, stay, come. Then Mickey added new skills. Rosie learned to go say hello. This means that Rosie will not approach a person until she is told that the person is ready to greet her. She learned the don't touch command. When Rosie hears it, she will not touch food or anything else until she hears, okay, take it. It is important for Rosie never to be rude and grab from a person. So I have to say both my dogs are really good at that. If I have food, they will sit and wait until I offer them the food. And I offer them the food just like this. I hand it to them. They don't rip it out of my hand. Unlike my cat. I'm going to say my cat Eugene will rip food out of your hand, will get up on the counter and steal food. He's a food snatcher. The people Rosie would visit might be using wheelchairs and walkers, so Rosie had to be comfortable with all kinds of equipment. Rosie also had to get used to being handled in different ways. So this kid is being very naughty and is pulling on Rosie's tail, right? And sometimes when you're around little kids and you're a dog, they don't know. Sometimes little kids don't know how to treat dogs or cats. So this is a little girl that probably hasn't been around dogs. Otherwise, she'd know better. Rosie had to get used to being handled in different ways. A young child might pull her tail or her long hair, not knowing any better. An elderly or ill person might pet her too roughly by mistake. Rosie had to be patient and gentle, even at times like these. So you can tell she's probably sitting there going, let go of my tail, right? But instead, she's being really patient and letting her kind of do that, right? And here's Rosie with her owner. Rosie also had to be a good traveler. To get to work, Rosie might need to ride on a train, a bus, or even an airplane. Rosie was given a special travel pass, which allows her to ride with me. We took many trips together. Rosie learned how to be a quiet, well mannered traveler. And of course, she made lots of friends. So sometimes service dogs and visiting dogs have to go on subways or they have to go on buses. My dogs would get really scared if I made them get on a bus because they've never been on a bus before. So this woman is taking her dog, giving her dog a wide assortment of experiences so her dog won't be afraid, right? And humans are kind of like that too. If you made me ride a bus and I had never been on a bus before, I would be nervous, or I'd never been on the subway. I remember the first time I went to New York and I rode on the subway, I was terrified. I went to New York when I was in high school. My sister lived there, to New York City. And I remember riding on a subway. I'd never been on a train and I'd never been on a subway, and it was scary. So she's taking the dog, giving the dog a variety of experiences so that Rosie will know what to do and will feel comfortable and confident. After 4 months of training, Rosie and her classmates were tested. Rosie went into a room with volunteers. The volunteers behaved the way people Rosie would visit might behave. A little girl with tubes was on a bed. Rosie did not nip at the tubes the way she would have when she was a puppy. Rosie lay quietly by the little girl's side. So sometimes when people are in the hospital, they have machines that help them to breathe or to eat, or machines that give them medicine. Sometimes there are machines that pump medicine into your body and they pump it in fast. If you take a pill, it takes longer for the medicine to work. But sometimes if they want it to work really fast, they just pump it right into an artery so that it travels all through your body quickly. So this could be a machine that's pumping medicine, or it could be a machine that's giving her food too. Sometimes people can't eat, and so they pump food into a person's body so that they don't have to worry about chewing and swallowing, right? You get all the nutrition, but without having to all the mess of food. A woman dropped a walker in front of Rosie. Rosie did not bark or snap or act fearful. She calmly stepped out of the way. There were many tests. Rosie passed them all with flying colors. A few weeks later, Rosie's badges came in the mail. It was time for our first visit. We were invited to a children's hospital. So when I bring my dogs to school, it's the same thing. I make sure that they've had their shots. I make sure that they have been bathed and that their hair is cut and that they're clean. You can't take a visiting dog to a hospital, a dirty, nasty, stinky dog that has fleas and hasn't had shots. You can't take that dog to a hospital. Before we went, I took Rosie to her vet, Dr. Jimmy Corral, for a checkup. A visiting dog has to be healthy. Then I gave Rosie a bath in special shampoo that made her feel soft and smell sweet. That Rosie would be a hard dog to wash. Look at all that hair. On the day of the visit, I packed water for Rosie to drink, a soft brush in case someone wanted to groom her, a ball so she could play, and Cheerios to eat. Cheerios are good for people and pets. When we went outside, Rosie had on her red harness, her badges, and a big red bow. I could see that Rosie was proud and she held her head up high. You know what? Dogs are kind of just like people in that way. When my dogs are coming to class, I've always put like a little shirt on them. I always make them wear a shirt or a sweater because my dogs behave better when they're wearing clothes. They know that it's a special occasion and that they need to be on their best behavior. Like when I have open studios at my house and I have hundreds of people coming through my house looking at my artwork, I always put my dogs in shirts or sweaters so that they know that they can't bark at everybody and they can't like chase people around and they can't nip at people. So they kind of sit in their sweaters and they behave better. And so Rosie, it's the same, right? As soon as she puts that little harness on, she knows it's like being on stage. She knows that it's her time to shine. And so she is on her best behavior. So here they are, they're walking to the hospital. At the Children's Hospital, David James, the program director, was waiting for us. I introduced myself and then Rosie. Rosie, sit. Paw, please, I said. Rosie gave Mr. James her paw. Hello, Rosie, said Mr. James. I have some friends I want you to meet. Follow me. So one of the cool things about visiting dogs is that I've been to hospitals a lot, particularly when my mom was sick, and hospitals are super depressing. Everyone's really stressed. Like people are stressed. The sick person is stressed. The family members of the sick person are stressed. And so one of the cool things about visiting dogs is that they lower everybody's stress level. Scientists have done studies with dogs and cats, and they've realized that if you own a dog and you have a dog in your life and you pet a dog every day, it makes you live longer than people who don't own dogs. If you have a cat, a cat makes you live longer than people who don't have cats. There's something about being around an animal, making a connection, petting that animal, listening to a cat purr lowers your nervousness, lowers your blood pressure, makes you feel more comfortable and less stressed. And so that's one of the reasons why visitor dogs are awesome, because they lower the stress level of people at the hospital. Rosie made a lot of new friends that day. Nina is in a wheelchair because she cannot use her legs, but she has a great throwing arm. Rosie, fetch, she called. Nina threw the ball way across the room. Lucky Rosie, she loves to fetch. Peter, who is blind, carefully brushed Rosie's long coat. Rosie would like to say thank you, I told him. I turned to Rosie and I said, speak. Rosie barked twice to thank Peter for grooming her so well. So that's also really comforting too. Petting and grooming your pet makes you feel better. It also makes them feel better. They like it too. They like being petted and they like being groomed. In the next room, we met Alexander. Alexander was by himself because he was too sick that day to play with the other children. Rosie loved Alexander right away. This is going to make me weepy. Sorry. I can't look at sick kids without feeling weepy. Sorry. The first thing she did was roll over on her back so Alexander could rub her belly. That made Alexander laugh. Rosie looks like a shaggy rug, he said. When Alexander lay down beside Rosie and they napped, then Alexander lay down beside Rosie and they napped together a while. When they woke up, they shared some Cheerios. I told Alexander how to keep Rosie from grabbing them. Rosie, don't touch, said Alexander. Rosie turned her head away. Okay, take them, Alexander said. Rosie ate the Cheerios from Alexander's hand. Then she licked Alexander on the cheek and got a big hug in return. Look at how cute he is. So he's probably has he's probably getting either oxygen or he might be getting some kind of medicine through that tube. A few weeks later, a call came from the village nursing home asking if Rosie would like to come and visit. We set up an appointment for the next day. Bee was the first person we met. Bee cannot use her arms or legs, and she has no feeling in them. Bee likes to watch Rosie and to feel Rosie's soft fur against her face. Then we met Thomas. Thomas was in a wheelchair. Rosie made herself at home in his lap. She's cuddly, just like my grandson, said Thomas. So look at the expression on. It's kind of interesting to look at how people respond to pets. They immediately, especially if it's someone that likes dogs or likes cats or likes pets, they immediately respond. Like, look at her face. She could have been really sad by herself in a rest home, in the care home. Nobody's visiting her, and this is how happy she is having a visiting pet. And same thing with him. He's really enjoying having the dog there, right? And so that's why visiting pets are so awesome. They really cheer people up. Down the hall, we heard a woman crying. I have so many problems, she said. Maybe you'll feel better if you tell them to Rosie, I suggested. Rosie is a very good listener. Rosie, she asked. She wiped away her tears and started to smile. My name is Rosie too. The two Rosies had a good visit. Then Linda, a nurse, asked us to look in on Bill down the hall. Don't worry if he won't talk to you. He hasn't spoken to anyone in weeks, and he hardly eats. I think he is very lonely, she explained. I brought Rosie to Bill's room. Would you like a visitor? I asked. Bill looked at Rosie and then turned away, but then he turned back for a few minutes and he just stared. Finally, he asked in a very quiet voice, how can the little dog see? I told Bill how Rosie's long lashes hold up her hair to let her see through. Suddenly, Bill was ready to visit. He had a lot to say about dogs with long hair and the dog he had when he was a child. So this is the picture of Bill. And how he wished he had his dog for company now. I told Bill that Rosie would come visit him again soon. By the time we left, Bill did not seem so lonely anymore. He was saying to Linda, my dog Harley loved to eat cherry jello. Are we having jello for dessert tonight? Linda was so happy. She said, you will have jello if I have to make it for you myself. So that's one of the things older people, whenever my dogs are around, my dad always starts remembering his dog that he had when he was a boy. He had my dad was a sheep herder, and so their family always had sheep herding dogs. And he had a dog named Muggs, like a little sheep herding dog named Muggs. And my dad always starts remembering back. My dad's 92, and he remembers his dog Muggs, and he always talks about Muggs whenever he's around my dogs. So it kind of brings back memories and connections from his childhood. When we left the nursing home, Rosie's tail was way up high and wagging. I offered her a drink of cool water, and then I lifted up her hair to look in her eyes, and they were clear and bright. Rosie, you are a very good visiting dog, I said. You are a very good friend. And here she is. Author's note, Rosie, a Tibetan Terrier, was trained at the ASPCA. She received the American Kennel Club's Canine Good Citizenship Award and is a Delta Society pet partner and a member of Therapy Dogs International. According to the legend, Tibetan Terriers were considered holy dogs. They were raised in Tibetan monasteries by lamas or priests and were given as gifts but never sold. The first Tibetan Terrier introduced to the Western world belonged to Dr. Agnes R. H. Grieg, an English physician who in the 1930s was presented with a puppy for saving the life of a Tibetan woman. A dog of any breed who has the right temperament and proper training may become a visiting dog. To find out about visiting dog programs in your area and their requirements for participating, call your local animal shelter or 4-H club or write to the Delta Society, a training and educational resource center at P.O. Box 1080, Renton, Washington 98057 9906. Remember to enclose a stamped self-addressed envelope for their reply. And then back here, she's just thanking all the different people who helped out and took pictures and stuff in the book and all the places where she took the pictures. So it's kind of interesting. You can kind of compare and contrast. A visiting dog is very different from a service dog, right? They have like a different, they're like a cheery, they cheer people up, right? So they have to have some of the same qualities that a service dog has, but their job is a little less involved. They just make people happy. A service dog has to look out for the human being that it's in charge of. And so it's a little bit more stressful stressful job for the dog, I'm guessing. All right, so I hope you enjoyed reading about Rosie. Every time I read this, I feel like I learned something a little bit new. All right, thanks for joining me.